Ever heard of a thief that steals something you don't even realize is missing?
Until it's almost gone. Yeah, that's the thing about pigmentary glaucoma.
It's called the silent thief of sight, for a reason.
You could be losing your vision and not even know it.
Which is why we're taking a deep dive into this condition today.
You're right to be concerned.
Pigmentary glaucoma is a unique type of glaucoma.
And it often shows up earlier in life than the more common kind we see.
In older adults.
That's right, and that's what makes this so important for our listener.
So before we get into the who of it all,
can you walk us through exactly what is happening inside the eye with pigmentary glaucoma?
imagine your eye like a sink.
With a constantly running faucet,
Okay,
it has a drain called the trabecular meshwork.
to keep the fluid flowing properly.
In pigmentary glaucoma, that drain gets clogged.
Kind of like when you get hair stuck in your sink drain.
Okay, that makes sense, but it's not actually hair clogging things up in our eyes, right?
Like not hair.
What is it?
It all starts with something called pigment dispersion syndrome.
Or PDS.
Think of your iris, the colored part of your eye.
Like it's made up of tiny little paint flakes.
In PDS, these paint flakes, which are actually pigment granules,
Start to shed.
so bits of your iris are flaking off. That sounds a little freaky.
It sounds worse than it is, but yes, in a way.
Now these little pigment flakes can then float over to the trabecular meshwork
That drain we talked about.
and block it.
When that drain gets clogged, the fluid in the eye, called aqueous humor, builds up,
That buildup increases the pressure inside the eye.
which we call intraocular pressure, or IOP.
And that pressure, that's where the danger zone is, right?
Exactly.
That's what can lead to vision loss,
High IOP over time damages the optic nerve.
which is responsible for transmitting images from your eye to your brain.
And here's the thing. This pressure buildup often happens gradually without any noticeable symptoms in the early stages.
So you might not even realize your eye sink is about to overflow.
That's why understanding the risks and getting those regular eye exams is so important.
You mentioned this type of glaucoma tends to affect younger people.
How much younger are we talking? Is this something our listeners should even be worried about?
Well, anyone can develop pigmentary glaucoma.
It typically shows up in people between their 20s and 40s.
That's significantly younger than when we typically see other types of glaucoma.
And here's the thing.
Men are about 3 times more likely to develop pigmentary glaucoma.
Even though pigment dispersion can happen to anyone, regardless of gender,
Wait, hold on.
men are more likely to develop pigmentary glaucoma even if they have the same amount of pigment shedding as women.
Why is that? What's going on there?
That's the million-dollar question, and researchers are still trying to figure out.
Exactly why this gender difference exists.
Okay, keep me on the edge of my seat then.
What are the leading theories?
One thought is that it has to do with the actual structure of the eye,
Particularly the space between the iris and the cornea.
known as the anterior chamber.
Men tend to have a deeper anterior chamber than women.
Interesting. So how does a deeper anterior chamber play into all of this?
Imagine it like this. A deeper chamber might create more turbulence in the eye fluid,
Like a mini whirlpool.
causing more pigment to break off from the iris and get stuck in the drainage system.
It's not the only factor.
But it's a major theory.
Wow, that's fascinating. So a deeper anterior chamber is like a whirlpool for pigment.
Potentially leading to a clogged drain and increased eye pressure.
That's a visual I won't soon forget.
It's definitely a helpful analogy to keep in mind.
And while that's a big one, there are other risk factors besides being male.
Being Caucasian, nearsighted, or having a family history of PDS can also increase the risk.
So if you're listening to this and thinking,
Wait a minute, this sounds familiar.
check a few of those boxes.
Don't hit the panic button just yet.
But definitely get those peepers checked out, right?
100%.
Early detection is key with pigmentary glaucoma.
And that brings us to another interesting piece of this puzzle.
The connection between pigmentary glaucoma and exercise. You wouldn't think something as healthy as exercise could be bad for your eyes.
But in this case...
Certain types of activities can actually make things worse.
Okay, now this is where things get really interesting.
So we know exercise is generally good for you.
But it can be bad for pigmentary glaucoma.
Tell me more. I need to know.
It's all about how movement affects that pigment dispersion we talked about.
High impact or jarring activities.
Think jogging, basketball, those kinds of things.
You can actually shake loose more of that pigment from the iris.
So it's like shaking a snow globe, but instead of snowflakes, it's those pigment flakes going everywhere.
You got it.
The more vigorous the shaking,
The more pigment gets dislodged.
which can worsen PDS and potentially lead to those dangerous pressure spikes.
So that's the takeaway here.
People who are at risk for pigmentary glaucoma or who already have it.
Should they just swear off exercise altogether?
Not at all.
And that's really important to clarify.
It's not about ditching exercise completely.
It's about making smart choices and working with your doctor.
So modification, not deprivation. That's good to hear.
What are some things people can do to stay active while still protecting their vision?
Lower impact activities like swimming, cycling, even a brisk walk.
Are great for overall health, including eye health.
They get the blood pumping without those jarring movements.
So it's about finding activities that don't turn your eyes into a shaken-up snow globe.
And for those who love their high-impact workouts, what's the advice there?
That's where a conversation with your eye doctor is crucial.
They can provide personalized advice based on your risk factors.
And might even suggest pre-workout eye drops to help manage eye pressure during exercise.
Don't just go it alone.
Get that expert guidance.
This is why I love these deep dives. So many things you'd never even think about otherwise.
You've given us a lot to think about so far.
What else do we need to know about pigmentary glaucoma?
Okay, this is all starting to make sense.
But I have to admit,
I'm a little nervous now.
if you're telling me I can't trust my own eyes to know if something's wrong,
How am I supposed to know if I need to see a doctor?
that's a great question,
And it highlights why those regular eye exams are so important.
especially for someone who might be at higher risk for pigmentary glaucoma.
So let's say our listener is thinking,
Okay, I need to schedule an appointment.
what can they expect during that eye exam?
What are the telltale signs an eye doctor is looking for?
An ophthalmologist
That's an eye doctor who specializes in diagnosing and treating eye diseases,
will do a comprehensive exam.
looking for specific clues that point to pigmentary glaucoma.
Walk us through it.
What kind of tests are we talking about?
One of the most important tests is called tonometry.
Remember how we talked about IOP?
That pressure inside the eye,
Tonometry measures that pressure.
kind of like a tire pressure gauge for your eye.
So they're literally checking to see if your eye sink is about to overflow.
Exactly.
They'll also use a special lens to examine the drainage angle of your eye.
Looking for any signs that those pesky pigment granules are blocking things up.
So they can actually see if the trabecular meshwork is clogged.
They can,
They'll also dilate your pupils,
which means they'll use special eye drops to make them bigger.
so they can get a really clear view of the optic nerve at the back of your eye.
Why is the optic nerve so important?
Because unfortunately,
That's one of the first places damage from glaucoma shows up.
they'll be looking for any changes in its appearance that could indicate a problem.
Okay, so they're checking the pressure
Looking for blockages.
and examining the optic nerve.
Anything else,
The last thing they'll likely do is a visual field test,
which checks your peripheral vision
or side vision.
for any blind spots.
Blind spots.
It sounds scary.
It can be.
But remember,
The goal of these tests is to catch things early.
the earlier we find pigmentary glaucoma,
The better the chances are of preserving your vision.
yeah, makes sense.
It's like putting together a puzzle
The doctor is gathering all these clues from different tests.
to get a clear picture of what's going on in your eye.
So let's say pigmentary glaucoma is diagnosed.
What happens next?
You mentioned treatment options earlier.
But is there a standard approach?
Is everyone's treatment plan the same?
Not at all.
Every treatment plan for pigmentary glaucoma is tailored to the individual.
Like a custom-made suit?
What are some of the factors that go into creating that custom plan?
A lot of things.
The severity of the condition,
The patient's overall health.
their lifestyle,
It all comes into play.
for example,
Someone who's very athletic and leads an active lifestyle,
might need a different approach than someone who's less active.
especially considering that link between exercise and pigment dispersion.
So finding that sweet spot between staying active and protecting your vision. It's about finding the most effective and sustainable way to manage the condition.
For the long haul.
Because pigmentary glaucoma is something you have to manage for life.
Right. It's not like you just take a pill and it goes away.
You're right.
It's considered a chronic condition
Which means it requires ongoing management to keep it under control.
and prevent it from progressing.
So what does that ongoing management look like for most people?
Usually.
It involves regular checkups with your eye doctor,
Maybe every 3 to 6 months.
or even more frequently, depending on how things are looking.
Okay, so those regular checkups aren't just suggestions.
They're really important for staying on top of things.
What happens at those checkups?
During those visits,
Your doctor will monitor your IOP
make sure that pressure is under control.
and examine your optic nerve for any signs of new damage.
They might also adjust your treatment plan as needed.
So it's all about staying vigilant and working closely with your eye doctor to keep those peepers healthy.
Exactly.
And that open communication with your doctor is key.
Let them know about any changes in your vision.
Any new medications you're taking,
Even if your exercise routine has changed,
it all matters.
it's like a partnership,
You're in this together.
working as a team to protect your vision.
And that's where having access to reliable information
Like what we're providing in this deep dive.
can make all the difference
I've
when
heard
it comes
that.
to our health.
Knowledge is power.
The more you know about pigmentary glaucoma
The better equipped you'll be to advocate for yourself.
and make informed decisions about your eye health.
So we've talked about the how and the why of pigmentary glaucoma.
But let's get real for a moment.
What does the impact of this condition look like on a personal level?
You know, it's one thing to talk about eye pressure and optic nerves.
But it's another to really understand how pigmentary glaucoma can impact someone's life.
You're absolutely right.
It goes way beyond just numbers on a chart.
Vision loss from glaucoma can affect everything.
Reading, driving, recognizing faces.
Even just getting around your own home.
Those are things most of us take for granted every single day.
It's easy to forget how much we rely on our vision.
Exactly.
And that's why it's so important to be proactive.
To pay attention to any changes in your vision.
And not hesitate to reach out to an eye doctor if you have any concerns.
Early detection really is key.
It can make all the difference in preserving your vision and living your life to the fullest.
I couldn't agree more.
And that circles back to why we're doing this deep dive today.
To empower you
Our listen.
with the knowledge you need.
Understanding your risk factors
Listening to your body.
and making those regular eye exams a non-negotiable part of your routine.
That's how you protect the precious gift of sight.
So we've covered a lot of ground today.
For anyone listening who's thinking,
Okay, this has been eye-opening.
but where do I go from here?
What's the single most important thing you want them to remember?
Remember this. You hold the key to your own vision,
Pigmentary glaucoma may be sneaky.
but it doesn't have to win.
By learning about this condition, recognizing the risks,
And taking charge of your eye health.
you're taking a powerful step towards protecting your sight for years to come.
Beautifully said.
Don't wait for warning signs or symptoms,
Schedule that eye exam.
and let your eye doctor be your partner in keeping those peepers healthy.
And there you have it. Our deep dive into the silent thief of sight, pigmentary glaucoma.
We hope you found this information helpful and empowering.
Remember, knowledge is power.
And when it comes to your health, being informed is your best defense.
Until next time, be well and keep those eyes healthy.